Somewhere in the Oregon hills, on a 5-acre lot about 20 minutes from the nearest city, there's a guy working out of his garage. He's got board games stacked up on one wall and a Warhammer painting station on the other. And in between, there's a desk where he's been building a video game for the past 9 months. He doesn't have a publisher or a studio. His pixel artist is in Poland, his UI designer is in the Netherlands, his sound designer is in London, and his wife does the voice acting from the same house. He's got 2 sons, 1 and 3, and the game he's making, this fantasy card game about a traveling troupe of Renaissance performers, currently has about 500 wish lists on Steam after his first month of marketing, which sounds like a start until you learn that the industry consensus is you need somewhere around 7 to 10,000 for a decent launch. His name is Charlie Haro. He goes by BossGrand online, and the game is called Fame or Folly.
So I've always wanted to make video games, and luckily I had the opportunity to have the space to do it, you know.
So before the garage and the card game, Charlie was CTO of a tech startup in San Francisco called Hello Office that he co-founded in 2016. And the short version is, they built a cloud platform for commercial real estate that got big enough to rebrand to Raise Commercial Real Estate and raise venture capital. And by the end, they were helping some of the biggest tech companies in San Francisco find office space. By the last funding round, the company was valued at $100 million, and it was eventually acquired by JLL, which is a Fortune 200 real estate firm with over 100,000 employees. But Charlie had already left by then. He had been gone for 2 years before the acquisition, and the reason wasn't really about COVID or the market, although he mentions those things. He was burnt out on being in an environment where everyone around him was focused on chasing money and building unicorn companies, and at some point he just decided he didn't want to be a part of that anymore.
Doing well, but then
Okay.
then COVID hit, and then the work from home thing started happening, and I kind of just saw the writing on the wall, and also I just wanted to get out of the city, you know, with everything that was going on. So I left in 2021, and I moved up here and just kind of been figuring out what I wanted to do next.
He moved to Oregon with his wife, and neither of them went back to work because they were both raising the kids. And then Charlie started trying to make games. Not Fame or Folly, not yet. The first attempt was a tactical roguelike inspired by Gloomhaven that he started after his first son was born, and he worked on it for about 4 or 5 months straight.
And that project is where I learned Unity in depth and gave me the skills I'm using today. However, my wife then became pregnant with our second child, and I was kind of at a roadblock with the game anyways, so I put that project on hold.
So the roguelike got shelved, and after his second son was born, Charlie finished playing Satisfactory and got the itch to build something again. So he started a Vampire Survivors like, which was a simpler way to get back into programming after the break.
I then kind of decided that it was like a little oversaturated, and I ran out of steam on it. Like, I wasn't having inspiration on ideas for how to add my own voice to that genre.
2 or 3 weeks on that one, and then he dropped it. So by this point, Charlie had spent months learning Unity on a game he couldn't finish, and weeks on a game he couldn't find a voice in. And he's sitting in his garage with all these skills, and no project that felt right.
Yeah, so I'm in my garage. I got like all my board games over there. My painting station where I paint the Warhammer is really to like the right of me. You can kind of show this.
Okay. Oh wow. At some point, Charlie had mostly stopped playing video games, and after that, it was just board games with friends. And one of the games he kept coming back to was this thing called Quacks of Quedlinburg. And if you hadn't played Quacks, the way it works is you've got a bag full of pieces and you're pulling them out one at a time. And every pull is this tiny gut check, because the longer you keep drawing, the more points you score, but some of the pieces in that bag will blow up your entire round if you hit them. So you're sitting there with a decent score already banked, and you know you could stop and keep it, but there's one more pull that could push you ahead. And you also know there's something bad in that bag somewhere, and you reach in anyway. That tension, that specific feeling of knowing you should stop but wanting one more, is what Charlie had been obsessing over, and he still didn't have a game for it. And then separately, Charlie had been working with a pixel artist from Poland through Fiverr on and off, and at some point he found the guy's itch.io page where he was selling character packs, and one of them had about 150 characters in it, all in this warm Renaissance style, these little performers and merchants and mystics. They looked great, but the only animation they had was bouncing up and down, which is a real constraint if you're trying to build anything where characters need to move or fight or interact.
I found this asset pack. I was like, oh my god, like how could I use all this art that's already made? Because I'm not a very good artist in terms of making pixel graphics. So I was like, oh my god, like, but they're all like this where they're just bouncing up and down. So you can't, it's very limiting in terms of what you could do with them without having to like pay for a ton more animations for every single character. I was like, oh well, what if it's a card game? And then I always wanted to make, like, my vision was like this whole Balatro meets Quacks of Quedlinburg.
So the Quacks mechanic gave him the core of how the game would feel, that push your luck tension on every draw. Balatro gave him the structure, the way runs loop and escalate, and how the meta game wraps around the card play. And the asset pack gave him 150 characters who needed a world to live in. And the world came from a fantasy novel Charlie loved called The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, where the main character grows up in a traveling troupe of performers. The tone he was going for wasn't dark medieval warfare. It was closer to a Renaissance fair, performers and music and color rather than knights and blood, and the characters from the asset pack just fit that. And then on top of all that, Charlie had this idea about deck building itself that came from something he'd noticed as a player, which is that in most deck builders, the building part happens between rounds. You play a hand, go to a shop, pick some new cards, play another hand. The deck building lives in the gaps. Charlie wanted to get rid of that gap entirely, so the building was the game. So every hand you're recruiting new performers and reshaping your deck while you play.
Most other games, deck building is the meta layer. Like in Slay the Spire, deck building isn't what you do within each encounter. It's what you do outside of the encounter. It's what you're doing in between.
Right.
And so in this game, every round, every hand, you have the opportunity to recruit new troopers and modify your deck.
And after a roguelike that stalled and a Vampire Survivors clone he couldn't find a voice in, this was the idea that stuck.
When I get inspired, there's no stopping me. I just want to keep working on it. And I felt like I was onto something early on, especially since I got the prototype into tabletop and I saw how it was already something that people enjoyed playing with. It gave me a lot of motivation to keep going.
Before any of it was a real video game, it was a spreadsheet. Charlie used a tool called Dexterous to turn his card data into printable formats and imported them into Tabletop Simulator, and he playtested the mechanics remotely with friends while building the Unity version at the same time. So by the time the design was validated, the engine was already halfway done. And for a game with this many moving parts, 9 months is genuinely fast. But the thing that ate out most of that time was one design problem. And it's the kind of thing where two good ideas are fighting each other, so there's no obvious way to make them stop. The core tension in the design is that it's a push your luck game where bad cards can wreck you, but it's also a deck builder where the whole point is getting rid of the stuff that's hurting you. And if players can do that too well, then there's no risk left and the game goes flat. Charlie spent months trying to solve that, and his first fix was just to force the bad cards back every round, and players hated it.
And then people complained about that because they're like, oh, you're taking away my agency as a deck builder. Like, if I remove the bad cards, like, why do I have to get them back? Like, that kind of defeats the purpose of it being a deck builder.
He eventually figured out a version that worked, but it took longer than anything else in the project. And the other thing about building a game alone is that after a while, you lose the ability to see it clearly. There's no second designer to push back on a decision, and no team lead to tell you the balance is off. It's just Charlie playing his own game over and over, trying to figure out whether the thing he built is too easy because it's actually too easy, or because he's played it 500 times and knows every card by heart. And there's no clean way to separate those two things when you're the only person in the room.
I have someone who, so I have that guy who's in Poland. I have someone who helps me with the UI design. He's in the Netherlands. I have like the guy who made the trailer is in London, and this, or actually the sound designer is in London too. So I kind of have people everywhere.
Who did the voice? Who did the voice? The woman's voice?
Oh, that's my wife.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, she's always had a very good English sounding accent that she could pull out. So I was like, oh, I could use this.
Yeah, you sound fully American, and then it was like fully British, the trailer.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm sure someone in England, might take offense to me to us saying that, but I mean, I think it's passable.
So he gets character assets from Poland and takes them into the engine and composes each card's scene himself. And every card in Fame or Folly is a composed scene, not just a character on a background, but something with about 6 layers to it, where the clouds drift on their own and some characters walk or shift behind the foreground, and you can hover over any card and this parallax window opens up and the whole thing comes alive. The art comes from someone else, but the composition is Charlie, one card at a time, arranging things in his garage until the scene feels right. And for a game with over 150 cards, that is a genuinely staggering amount of work for only one person.
What you care about as a developer is trying to generate wish lists. And so kind of the general consensus is you need like 7 to 10,000 like at a bare minimum to kind of have a decent launch. And obviously more than that is great. Like a mega popular game can get 50,000, 100,000 wish lists.
Charlie's at about 500 after his first month of marketing, and card games have a specific problem on top of that, which is that they're almost impossible to sell through a screenshot or a trailer, because you actually need to sit down and play one before it makes sense. Balatro had exactly that problem and didn't take off until the demo came out and people could feel the thing for themselves, and Charlie's banking on the same path. Right now, March 2026, the game is in private playtesting, and from there, it's a public demo at a Deckbuilding Steam Festival in April or May, then Steam Next Fest in June, then release in August or September.
I was originally going to do later in the year, but I'm concerned with GTA 6 coming out that it would get drowned out.
So the window is small, and neither Charlie nor his wife is working because they're both home with the kids, and the whole thing comes down to whether a demo can get a card game that's hard to explain into enough people's hands before GTA 6 swallows the market later in the year.
I'd already been working on Raze for 5 or 6 years, and I was burnt out. It was really a time to reflect, like I think it was for many people. And I realized that my heart wasn't in continuing at Raze, especially since it had put so many roadblocks for our business because we were a commercial real estate company. And so everyone was working from home. And it was a hard time for commercial real estate in general. I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I could take a year off, and I took that time to start a family, and I got married and had 2 children, and it's been a wonderful experience. During this, I was also relearning Unity and gathering the skills I need to make a game.
There's a version of the story where the distance between a $100 million startup and hand-placing pixel art clouds on Renaissance cards is supposed to read as a dramatic reinvention or a risky leap or a fall. But the whole time we were talking, Charlie had been playing through the game and he wasn't really looking at the cards anymore because he knows all of them by memory at this point. And somewhere in the last round, he noticed the scoring animations were running slower than they were supposed to. And you could tell it was bothering him. He started thinking out loud about what might be wrong. Something about an animation curve where the axes might be swapped. And then he finished the run and basically said he had to go.
I love coding. I mean, it's the thing I'm most comfortable with. The thing I've done for like 15 years now.
Right.
But yeah, no, I enjoy coding, and I don't know if I like finding bugs necessarily. I like fixing them.
He didn't wrap up the conversation and deal with it later. He found the bug, and that was it. The interview was over because the fix couldn't wait.